It's Jacob from Wedge Me This here. This is going to be Wednesdays with Wager, episode 5, week 5, whatever you want to call it. Um, sorry. Uh, this feels a little close to me. We'll get started about 10 or 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock Central Time, my time. We'll get into it. If you're here watching me right now, you got any questions for me, ask away. I will answer them as well as I know how. So, interesting week last week for sure. I think we had some teams come back down to earth a little bit, and we had maybe some teams look like they're supposed to look. Uh, we had a couple weird results, I'd say. You figured out that you can't play with a quarterback that's only been there a week. Miami can't do that. It's not going to work. Even against Tennessee, it still won't work. These guys are all still professional players. You can't just show up off a practice squad and in 1 week have an offense and be able to do anything in the NFL. It's just not a realistic thing. I'm surprised they even tried it. Surprised that they didn't just use their practice squad guy. It would have made a lot more sense. Miami, they go get Huntley. Now I get it makes sense for the future, but it didn't for that game. And that was probably a winnable game with their practice guy. It wasn't like Tennessee was blowing their doors off. What it was is that Miami offense couldn't do anything because Tennessee didn't have to guess. They didn't have to defend the pass. They knew they weren't going to throw the ball very much. So it was just one of those situations where Miami as an organization just made some real bad choices right there. Oh, we're going to get into that one in just a minute, Derico. That's going to be one of our main focuses this Thursday night game for sure. Looks like we got about 2 minutes before 9 o'clock. Might as well get rolling, right? Might as well just get rolling. So here we go. Let's talk about week 4 a little bit. I want to just talk about a few things. I want to talk about one of the Monday night games, Lions and Seattle. That was the worst officiating I think I've seen in the NFL this year. What's up, Fuzzy? It was the egregiousness of the calls, the blatantness of the calls, and it was going both ways. Some of the calls, they were phantom calls. They were just making stuff up. One time, DK Metcalf just gets tackled in the end zone when the ball's coming to him, and they don't call it PI. I mean, right toward the end of the game there, it was just a really, really bad officiated football game. Seattle kind of got robbed there. I don't think Seattle was going to win. I did like them to win the game before the game, but as the game went on, I don't think they were going to win because if a quarterback completes every pass, you need to do a better job rigging these games. If a quarterback completes every single pass, you're not going to win. So that's not really on the Lions. I don't think that's a good indicator of how good the Lions are. I think it was a good indicator of how bad Seattle was. Because every pass, even the worst team in the NFL, is going to stop you from completing one pass. For whatever reason, Seattle just could not stop Goff from completing passes. And some of those were wide open. My favorite team is the Broncos. It doesn't really have any bearing on when I'm handicapping at all. I bet against them most of the time. So, but it's just, sometimes it's just so weird. Sometimes, how do you not defend one pass? I mean, you can't get a tip ball once. You can't actually cover a guy one time in the game. I mean, even get a call go your way, you mug a guy and it hits the ground or something, I don't know. That was just such a weird game. No, I don't think sports are rigged. I don't. I'm not going to really get into that conversation on here. I don't think they're rigged. 2 reasons why is I've never heard a good reason to rig them, because all the reasons that people come up with, they don't need to do it. They don't need to rig it because the viewership's already there. They don't need Vegas doesn't need to try to rig anything because the people are already going to bet. Sports betting's never been bigger. They don't need to rig winners and losers. There's plenty of losers. So it's they have the rigging built into the minus 110. That's as rigged as it gets. So into the line, they already get their edge right there. Anyone that thinks sports betting is rigged, like that's the angle on it, doesn't understand what sports betting is. So here's the thing. If you believe that the Vegas has anything to do with it, or the handicappers, the way Vegas works is they want even money on both sides of the bet, and then they just take the juice. They don't want to gamble. Vegas doesn't want to have one side heavier than the other. So what they do is, like, let's say the Caesars Sportsbook takes in $1 million on the Bucks tomorrow. That means they also want $1 million on the Falcons. But let's say they only get 250,000 on the Falcons, right? Well, they're going to go take $250,000 to another casino, and they're going to bet it to rig it to where they have even money on it, so they can just collect. Vegas doesn't gamble on sports. That's a misnomer. That's not how they operate. Powder Girl. I'm not big on the Detroit Lions. I actually think they've got lucky 3 games this year. But they are winning, so that's undeniable. They did make the NFC Championship game last year, so yeah, they have a shot. They have the talent to have a shot. I'm not big on them. I still think they're kind of fluky. I still think they're kind of flash in the panty, but they have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and that matters a lot. But they do have the talent, and it's not like anyone's running away from with the NFC, unless it's Minnesota just keeps winning, I guess. But so yeah, I mean they should be right in there in the playoffs. Do the Jets have a chance in Minnesota? I actually think the Jets are a bad match for Minnesota. Personally, I don't think that's a great matchup for them, especially the Jets coming off of just a really ugly loss against Denver. That doesn't mean they'll beat them, but I don't think that Minnesota is just going to dominate them. I actually think Minnesota will struggle a little bit with the Jets because the Jets do bring some really talented individuals on defense. You know, their D line is really good. They do have Sauce Gardner. They do have some really talented individual players that I think will give Minnesota a little bit of a problem. The 49ers weren't able to give them a problem, though, and that does make me a little leery. But I kind of think that the 49ers might have overlooked them a little bit. I don't think the Jets will. Obviously, the Jets need this win. And, it is – I'm still hard to believe in Minnesota, right? If anyone that is just all on board with Minnesota already, you have a lot of guts because it's not all that different from last year, right? In fact, you could say they have a worse quarterback, right? You could say that their quarterback isn't as good. He's performing just fine, but it's not like we have a long history of Sam Darnold being a good quarterback. This is like the first time he's been a good quarterback. So I'm still a little leery on him. I only buy the 4-0 because they've been so dominant on defense. And even last week, they almost gave that game back last week. They almost gave it back to the Green Bay, but they didn't. And that's a good sign for a team that likes to win a lot, is they don't give games back. That Denver game, I feel like that Denver game is a real outlier because it was like monsoon rain there. And Denver does have a better than people think defense, and I think their defense is actually far better than people realize. And they gave them a little bit of problems, and then the rain contributed. And Rodgers didn't play his best game. I think that was a little fluky. And then the Jets had missed a field goal late. There was a big sack at the end of the game. I mean, that the Jets lost that game was far more related to the weather, I think, than it was to the talent on teams. I'm still up in the air on the Jets. I've never been a huge Rodgers fan because he doesn't perform the best in the playoffs. He kind of chokes in the playoffs, and that bothered me. with him winning all the MVPs and stuff. So I'm not a huge Rodgers guy. I do think the Jets are a really talented football team, but they just may not be in the right place with the right coaching. I actually blame the Jets' problems on their coaching more so than their players. I don't think the offensive coordinator is good, and I don't think Saleh is a good head coach. I think he's a great defensive coordinator and a terrible head coach. All right. I like it, Mr. Plenty. I I don't even know who Nick Gurr is, so I'll have to check it out. I'll have to see who that is. Um, are there odds like plus 1 million or something? Is that like someone? Denver will have a problem with the Raiders. 100% will have a problem with the Raiders. That game will be really close. I have no idea who will win that game. All right, let's get into some last week's stuff. So the first thing I saw, this terrible officiating in the Seattle game, and I do think the way it was played that Detroit should have won, but man, the officiating was awful. Okay, let's go to the Bills. The Bills is a big game from last week because we got to see who the Bills defense really is, and we got to see that the offense isn't all that good with no premier skill players, right? So the Ravens rolled in, and I mean, well, the Bills came to the Ravens, but the Ravens demolished them from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. The Bills never had a chance, and most of that had to do with just the overall lack of talent on the Bills team. The talent compared to talent in that one, the Ravens were so much more talented, it was evident in the game. Where the Bills had been facing teams that weren't as talented as them or were equal talent, and Josh Allen was able to somewhat outweigh the lack of ability. Well, against the Ravens, you saw the Bills need some pieces. That doesn't mean the Bills won't win their division. The Bills will probably still win their division. Miami's in shambles. The Patriots aren't good enough. And we're not sure what the Jets are. So the likelihood that the Bills win the division is pretty good because if they split with the Jets and then they beat Miami twice and the Patriots twice, that's probably playoff. That's probably division bound right there without anything else on their schedule. So without any of the other wins on their schedule. So most likely, I still think the Bills probably win their division. It'll be the 6th year in a row, I believe. They still have the best quarterback in the division, in my opinion. Sorry, Aaron Rodgers. You're at this point in your career, you're not as good as Josh Allen. And they have a pretty good tight end, and I do think they can put it together. But man, it would be really smart of them to get a premier receiver or at least a guy that's reliable. Because right now, I bet most of the people on that are watching this right now can't even name Bill receivers. That's how kind of obscure they really are. So the Bills they need some more help. They're still going to get carried a long way by Josh Allen alone. And Cook is a pretty good player, and Dalton Kincaid are pretty good players, but they still need some more help. And their defense is just Swiss cheese when you have a real team against them. When there's actually real talent playing against them, they're not great. So, and now the Bills, this was held for review. Let's see what it says. Everybody, please hit the like button and subscribe. Why would they hold that? I don't understand this. Why I've never even set a moderator. I don't even know who my moderator is. It must be YouTube or something. But let's get to one more thing I want to talk about, and that's the big thing. Okay, so the one big thing this year, and it actually isn't getting talked about all that much, is the Chiefs playing for football immortality. If the Chiefs three-peat this year, no one's ever done it in the Super Bowl era. If they three-peat, that's a thing that will live on for probably 70, 80 years. There probably won't be another team that three-peats. It's so hard to repeat. It's only happened a few times. That's why three-peating has never happened. And they started out 4-0, and it's probably the ugliest 4-0 we've seen in a while, right? They keep losing players, but they keep winning. The Chiefs are so hard to beat. You have to stomp on their head when they're down, and you have to crush them until they can't play no more. If you don't, the Chiefs will come back and beat you, or they will make enough plays to stop you from beating them. And that's what happens a lot anymore. Yeah, Powder Girl, before the Super Bowl era, teams did it. There, I think Green Bay did it. Um, Chicago may have done it. The Browns may have done it. Back then, teams, just far fewer teams, when it was AFL, NFL, and they would win multiple Super Bowls in a row, or multiple NFL championships, AFL championships in a row. But since the Super Bowl era, it's never happened. No one's ever three-peated. There's been a handful of back-to-backs. I actually don't think anyone's really ever been all that close to three-peating. I think the closest someone got maybe was the NFC Championship. The 49ers, did they get back to the NFC Championship? I can't remember for sure. That was a long time ago. But now some teams have been to, like the Bills went to 4 Super Bowls in a row. So that's happened before, but they lost all 4 of them. So there's been stuff like that that's happened, but repeating and then three-peating is at this point, it has been impossible. And the Chiefs have a legitimate shot at doing it. They're obviously going to win their division, so they're going to be in the playoffs. We'll see how healthy they are in the playoffs. And I'm a Broncos fan. I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I do kind of want to see history. I want them to at least have a chance at the history. I'd love to see them in the Super Bowl, whether they win or lose, but at least have a shot at it, right? At least have a shot at going down as like the greatest dynasty ever, or whatever it ended up being called. But anyways, let's move on to the Thursday game. So it's Tampa Bay, 3 of 4. Well, the Chiefs have won 3 of 4 too. Tampa Bay and Atlanta, in Atlanta. So I have an interesting take here on this one. I actually think the wrong team is favored, and it's Tampa Bay plus 1.5. Tampa Bay should be favored in this game. And if you go by the thought process that Vegas gives the home team 3 points, then Tampa Bay is the favorite, but they don't actually do that, guys. That's not a thing. They have a specific home field advantage calculation for every, like they put it in, and every team has a different home field advantage. Some teams have over 3, some teams have under 3, some teams they have 0. So in this case, I would say that because it's Atlanta and it's a dome, they have some kind of home field advantage. But I just think the wrong team's favored here. But it's more of a situational issue for me, is that Atlanta has had a brutal schedule. All right, they started out with the Steelers and got beat up by the Steelers, all field goal game, but they just got manhandled by the Steelers. Then they play a crazy game that comes down to a last-minute drive against Philly, right? They win it, but it's a last-minute drive. The Rams, Googs are funny. So it comes down to a last-minute drive, right? They get there, and they win the game. Then they got to see the Chiefs, right? They got to see the Chiefs. And then they play a crazy game against the Chiefs, a really hard-fought, tough game against the Chiefs. And then now they play a last possession game against New Orleans. And Tampa Bay has not had that, right? They played one tough game against Detroit. And now they had that weird anomaly game where Denver blew them out at home. And that was a weird thing. But then last week, they had no problem at all with the Eagles. They just coasted through that game. So I actually think just the pressure of the season so far on Atlanta, this is too many games in a row that are too tough. And then this is a short week. I don't think Atlanta competes in this game. I actually think this is a game that sounds weird enough that they kind of take off and they kind of lay flat. And then I also think Tampa Bay is just the better team. I think they're just overall the better team. And as of right now, I would say they have the better quarterback. And I would say they have the better coach. Mets Brewers went over, baby. That's 2 out of 3 today. Good. I'm not watching. I have everything else pulled up. That's awesome. Um, so I like Tampa on the money line, and I actually put this out to my Discord guys earlier. Yeah, 2 out of 3 today in baseball. Not bad. Um, Earlier in the week, like on Tuesday when it came out, but I just don't. I think it's too much. I think a short week is going to hurt Atlanta really bad. And if Tampa's going anywhere on a short week, Atlanta's a good place to go. It's in a dome. It's close. Not a lot of travel. It's just a good spot for Tampa. That's already the better team. That's kind of cooking. They're kind of rolling. Baker's playing really well. The defense is playing good enough. I mean, Atlanta at full strength, this would probably be a great game. I just don't think they're there. Plus, the big kicker is Atlanta gets the least pressure on the quarterback of any team in the NFL. And if you don't pressure a quarterback, no matter which one they are, they're gonna score on you. So I actually don't think this game's close. I took the money line for Tampa. Um, and I don't think it's close. I think Tampa wins from the beginning to the end. But I did take the money line for Tampa. Obviously, Tampa's a good teaser spot at the +1.5. 6 point teaser gets them over 7. I also took Tampa over 9.5 team total in the first half. So listen to what I just said. Tampa Bay over 9.5 points team total. That's only their points in the first half. I thought that was a really good play. That they only have to get to 10 points in the first half. To me, that seems almost like a layup. And the juice, I think the juice was 140, so the juice reflects it being a layup. Um, then I like Baker Mayfield over 10.5 rushing yards as well. It seems like every game he takes off a few times. And in this one, it was only 10.5 to get -110. And so I took that. I don't, I have a hard time believing he won't run for 11 yards. But he might not. And then I also took Baker Mayfield to score a rushing touchdown. And the reason is because it was +500, 5-1. He scored a handful of rushing touchdowns already this year. When they get close to the line, like they're gonna run QB sneaks. They're gonna do some different things. So I like the +500. Again, that's more of a value play. That's just kind of something I throw in there because I expect to win these other bets. So it's kind of like almost like a bonus bet in craps, where you're just trying to catch a little bit of lightning there at 5-1. And so I just like the value in that one. And now on this one, so Evans and Godwin are both plus money on their TD. So Evans at +125 and Godwin at +145. So what it means is that you put a unit or half a unit on each guy. As long as one guy gets a touchdown, win money. If both guys get a touchdown, you win a bunch of money, right? So you get almost a whole right. And I feel like between Evans and Godwin both being plus money, there's a good chance sometime in this game that one of them is going to catch a touchdown pass. So I like that they're both plus money. You don't get that every time. Sometimes, Evans will be -110, and that kind of ruins it. But in this case, it makes it a value play as well. You're taking two guys. As long as one of them hits, you make a little bit of money. If both of them hits, you have a really good day. So overall in the Thursday, what I like is the Tampa Bay money line. I like Tampa Bay over 9.5 team total in the first half. Baker Mayfield over 10.5 rushing yards. Baker Mayfield to get a rush TD. It was at +500 when I bet it. Um, Good value, really good value there if it happens to happen. And then Evans and Godwin, kind of a paired bet, but not a parlay, guys, not a parlay. Just you're thinking of them as splitting a unit between the two. And then whichever, if both guys score, one guy scores, as long as one of them scores a touchdown, you'll make money there. All right. So you look for spots like that on the guys that are actually going to get the ball. They're actually going to get the red zone looks. If you find two of them that are plus money, it's a good bet. It's somewhat hedging against each other almost, but it's still a great bet. I actually think there's a good chance that you get both of them. But I would say that the opportunity to get one of them is above 80%. What's up, Mr. Ahmed? Hi. All right, so let's go to Sunday. Let's talk about Sunday. Believe it or not, I didn't like a ton of the games this week. A lot of them are very evenly matched and stuff. Um, so what I'm looking at is I'm gonna ride this wave with Washington at home. I got it when they were laying 3. They're laying 3.5 now. Okay. My name is okay. Well, hello. How are you? I'm from Arkansas. Well, kind of. I live in Arkansas. I'm not really from here, but I do live here. So I'm riding this hot hand with Washington. I'm going to lay these points. I actually laid it at 3. I'm doing great. I laid it at 3. It's at 3.5 now. I don't have an issue with the 3.5. Believe it or not, in this game, I would probably go up to the 6.5. My favorite country is America. All right. All right. Mine is too. And they're just so high, and they're so hard to defend with just with Daniel's ability to make third downs. I know everyone is so hyped about his throwing and all that, and that's all great, and that's way ahead of schedule. But his real value is in he's able to run for first downs on third down. If you watch all these games, especially in the okay, um, especially in the Cincinnati game, every time a big third down came up, he just ran for it, and that just puts a lot of pressure on a defense when you have to cover the receivers on third down, but then you also have to worry about this guy. They can really run. He's like a real dynamic runner, and okay, you'll get no judgment here, man. It's fine. You can. We have no issue with who you are. You can be whoever you want. Um, so, but anyways, you're kind of throwing me off, man. So I like Washington. I'm, I am, I don't do that on here. I don't do politics. I don't do religion. This is a gambling show. I don't think really either one has a place in this. So if that's what you're interested in talking about, man, I'm sure there's a lot of shows and a lot of forums for that. But this is a sports betting show and a specifically NFL show. So if you're interested in that, this you're in the right place. If you're interested in the other stuff, then you're really not in the right place. Um, you're a Tams fan. But anyway, so I like Washington, one of my best plays of the week. I think I'm at least going to ride this wave until it falls off. I do think Washington will eventually somewhat come back to earth. I don't think they can score 40 points a game um, continually, but I do think that they're going to give Cleveland some problems. Cleveland's kind of a mess. They just lost a game to the Raiders. So um, that's what I like. I also like Baltimore, guys. I think Baltimore going to Cincinnati. So Lamar Jackson versus Joe Burrow. Lamar is 4-1 versus Joe Burrow. He doesn't have an issue beating the Bengals. It's not like the Kansas City thing. The Bengals kind of have this chip on their shoulder for Kansas City. The Bengals roll over for Baltimore. They do. I mean, Hundley almost beat them in the playoffs once, and Lamar gives the Bengals problems. Um, It'll be a lot like the Daniels game versus the Bengals. They're not going to be able to handle the the offense or the defense. And like I said, Lamar is 4-1 against Burrow in their careers. It'll be 5-1. Um, so I don't have a lot more to say about them other than I just think that Baltimore dominates the Bengals, and I'm riding that trend here, that 4-1 trend, and plus Baltimore is obviously one of the most talented teams in the NFL. Where the Bengals have some talented players, they're not an overly talented team. Um, so we'll move on. So I got some totals here. I got two overs that I like. Buffalo and Houston, I like as an over. And I got it at 47 and a half. I think it's still sitting there. The reason I like this is because I don't actually think either defense is all that good. Well, I know Buffalo's isn't. Good night, Mr. Sir. Um, I don't think Buffalo's is all that good. And I actually think Houston's is suspect as well. And against Josh Allen, I think they're going to struggle. So bet on the Rams, he says. Houston and Buffalo over 47 and a half. That's a lot of points this year in the NFL, believe it or not. They haven't been a lot of high scores like that. But I do think this one goes over that. And then the Jets in Minnesota is the other one. You're getting this one at a big value at 40 and a half. The way Minnesota has scored the football, we're probably only going to need two scores out of the Jets in this one. If Minnesota keeps on their 24 to 28 point game, then the Jets aren't going to have to do a lot. And so I like this one over 40 and a half. It's actually my favorite total of the week to get over that number. I actually think this is a relatively easy bet on this one. To me, it's surprising it's so low. The Denver game, I think, is driving this down. I think this should have been like 45-ish, maybe 45, 46, but it's at 40 and a half for some reason. And we're going to take advantage of it. Well, I'm going to take advantage of it. It's in Minnesota. Yeah. He's fine. I saw him on the McAfee show. The Jets. I saw him on the McAfee show. He was his same self, his same kind of eclectic, eccentric self. So I think he'll be all right. But either way, you're still getting the Minnesota offense there that has been really, really good. And I like it, okay? You're so crazy, Googs. You are so crazy, Googs. But so all right. With that, that's hilarious. So I'm gonna talk about a couple games. His labrum, damn spell check. So I'm gonna talk about a few games, right? So the Miami Pats game, the Vegas and Denver game, and the Dallas and Pittsburgh game. And the reason I'm going to talk about these three games is in these three games, I think the field goal props are good. In all of these instances, there's an issue with the team scoring touchdowns, right? Miami and the Patriots aren't going to score very many touchdowns. The Vegas and Denver are not going to score very many touchdowns. And Dallas and Pittsburgh, they haven't shown the ability to score a ton of touchdowns this year. In all the instances, they've kicked a ton of field goals. Every one of these teams kicked a ton of field goals this year. So I think that all three of those games, you could bet the over 3.5 field goal prop, the total field goal prop, not the individual kickers, the total over 3.5 field goals in each one of those games. And I'll be surprised if you don't win all three. But likely you'll at least get two out of those three. So the three games where I think the field goal prop is going to be golden is Miami Patriots, Vegas Denver, and Dallas Pittsburgh. Again, it's only 4 field goals in a game. All of these games have a reason why there would be a lot of field goals. Either it's the lack of offense for the teams or the quality of defense, essentially, with Pittsburgh. And Dallas has a kicker that can kick from like the 20. So I like that. I like those three games for the field goal props. I actually have put a unit. What I did is whatever the negative is. So if it's minus 120, I put 120. If it's minus 110, I 110. So I'm trying to win $100 on each one of those props. The Dallas kicker is a monster. And then I'm going to talk about Sunday Night Football just a little bit, just because I think this is a standalone game because it's Dallas and Pittsburgh. I think the Pittsburgh money line is the way to go in this one, and partially it's because it's in Pittsburgh. The other reason is Dallas doesn't stop the run, and that's what Pittsburgh wants to do. Pittsburgh wants to run the ball at you, and control the clock and win the game in a 13-10 game, right? So that's what they try to do, and they repeatedly try to, and they do good at it, right? Pittsburgh wins over 500 of the games, like they go over 500 every year. So in this one, I like Pittsburgh money line. I think, and you're the favorite here. I don't really want to lay any points because this could be a 12-10 game or a 14-15 game or 13-14, something like that. It could be that kind of ugly game. And I like Justin Fields to run a touchdown in. I don't think Dallas will all of a sudden be better at stopping a run. And they're going against a team that literally just wants to run the ball with a guy at quarterback that can run. So I actually think that Sunday night game is kind of its own standalone thing. So I like the Pittsburgh money line, and I like the Fields touchdown. And remember, I also like the over 3.5 field goals in that game. And so those are kind of all what I looked at this week, and what I've either put money on or I'm going to put money on. Some of this stuff I'm waiting until I get closer, trying to get a better number, trying to get a better money line. One other thing I want to talk about, and I did this last week, is I'm going to give out all the games that I think are teaser friendly, right? I think are games that will fit teasers. And last week I only missed one. The Jets brought me. Otherwise, I would have got all those right. If you would have chose any of those games to tease, you would have won. So I like the Bucks plus 1.5, teasing it up to plus 7.5. I like Houston plus 1, teasing it up to plus 7. I like the 49ers -7, teasing down to -1. I like the Raiders plus 2.5, teasing up to 8.5. I like the Dallas side plus 2.5 up to 8.5. And I like the Jets in Minnesota over, teased down to 34.5, over 34.5. So those are the three, well, not the three, sorry, the 6 teaser spots I think will work, that are going to be teaser winners for you guys on your 6-point teasers. I know a lot of people like to play teasers. I do as well. I will have all those 6 mixed and matched in teasers, trying to take advantage of, winning, hopefully at least 5 out of 6 of them. There's always one game that goes awry and ends up burning the teaser. Early on in the year, the Wong teaser was terrible because the underdogs kept winning by just outright winning the games. The 7-point underdogs, which people tease down, they don't tease up. And so what ends up happening is you just lose those bets. It's kind of come back to earth now, and the teasers Wong has started working. Again, and if you don't know what I mean by Wong teasers, guys, go look up Stanford Wong. There's a bunch of stuff on him. You can read his books and this, that. He come up with a teaser system, and a lot of it has to do with teasing through what they refer to as key numbers or primary numbers in football, the 3, 7, 4, them things, and teasing back down, throwing and stuff. And that's the idea by a lot of what I put out right there, and that's the handicapping style that is in. Guys, teasers work. You just have to be consistent with them. You can't get wild with teasers. Don't put a 9 teaser together. Just do 2 team teasers. As you're gonna win plenty on them. Don't do 10 pick parlays and all that stuff. I know they put that big number on it if you win it, but guys, your odds of winning it are so bad that it's easier to just do a 2-pick parlay or a 2-pick teaser. You're going to win so much more often. And eventually you're going to do better with the smaller bets than the bigger bets. I know you might hit one of them a year and it might be this great, glorious thing, but the fact of the matter is you're going to lose 50 or 60 of them before you hit one. So big teasers, big parlays, guys, just aren't worth it. I know that number makes it look nice when that payout number, but guys, they're just throwing money away when you do big teasers like that and big parlays. Stick to the 2-teamers if you're going to parlay better. And guys, parlays are a teaser. They're a type of, teasers are parlays. Yeah, sure. So, uh, Googs, it was last year. Um, Googs, it was college basketball, 9 teams. Was it Googs? It was 9 or 7. It was the one, it was the one that Brian Burns, remember Googs? He put the round robin in. Remember he won all that money on it. I can't remember. Anyways, it was 9 or 7, but it was last year. That's the biggest amount of teams I've ever hit in one. Um, Years ago, when I used to do pick-alls, I had one season where I hit when they had 14 game weeks. I hit all 14 games twice in one season on a pickle. Now that's a lot different than if I teased all those. Yeah, I did it twice in one season. Let me think of what year that was. That would have been like 2009. Whatever it was, Philip Rivers and Ladainian Tomlinson, they were still on the Chargers because I was riding the Chargers and they kept winning for me that year. So, but yeah, I stay away from any of that now. I'm a very, very consistent sports bettor. I do the same things over and over and over. I have very specific things I like to look at. I don't really get out of my lane much. I definitely don't do a lot of long shot parlays. 16, yeah, that's nice. Now, when I say this, guys, I know if you've never watched any of my other stuff, I talk about this 85-15 rule. So 85% of your bets should be single plays. And what I mean by that is you only need one outcome to win the bet. So single play, whether it's a side, a total, a prop, whatever it is, you need one outcome to win it. 85% of your plays that you put in should fit that. 15% of your plays should fit everything else you like to do. Your teasers, your parlays, your miracle unicorn bets, anything like that. So 85-15, if you'll live in that 85-15 world, I promise you'll do better. And so you can bet the same bets that you're putting in your 9 pick, just bet them all individually too. So make it 10 plays. That way 85-15, you're going to get a much better baseline of two things: of how good you are at gambling, number one, because you're going to know your actual winning percentage, how many of these I'm actually winning. And number two, you're going to have a constant flow coming in as long as you're doing okay. As long as you're doing just over 50%, you're going to have a constant flow of money coming back in to where you can keep making bets. And a lot of times that's more important to the guys getting started, is that they're just getting the opportunity to keep going. Now, if you've been sports betting for a long time, you're going to want to hit a certain percentage and be profitable. And I know that seems like the guy that's just starting would also want to do that, but they have to get all the people that just start into sports betting. There's two problems that happen to everybody that started into sports betting. First problem is they think they know more than they do. All right. That's the very first thing. They think, because they watch these games and they play fantasy football and they do all that, they think they really know who's going to win and lose these games. And then you put money on it and everything changes. Now you're looking at lines, you're looking at spreads, you're looking at injury reports, you're looking at, is it turf? Is it grass? Is the field goal post move to the right? I mean, all this stuff, none of it really matters. It still all just comes down to basic analytics and some situational stuff. You can look at all that DVOA, you can look at all that stuff, and it's going to lead you to the same exact spot. You can lead you to the same exact spot as better coach, better quarterback, better defense. That's the simplest way to start handicapping in betting games. If you can limit yourself to just the games, bet on the side that has the better coach, the better quarterback, and the better defense. Now that doesn't always happen, right? So let's take this for example. We'll take last week, right? When we saw Atlanta or the week we saw Atlanta and the Chiefs play, right? The Chiefs were laying 4.5 or 5.5 in that game. And what we had was whatever it was, they barely covered, but they covered, okay? But if you looked at that game from just this perspective, better coach, better quarterback, better defense. They all were on the Chiefs side, even though the Chiefs were on the road laying points. If you would have bet that, you would have won. Let's go to this week, all right? Baltimore, Buffalo. Better coach, equal quarterback, better defense. So you got 2 out of 3 and a tie. Bet Baltimore, all right? Here's a better one for you. This is going to be a really fun one, and I'll show you why having one thing mismatched matters, right? Why one thing being the wrong way matters, all right? Let's go to Washington, all right? The Washington game. Let's go to the Washington game versus the Bengals, all right? Who has the better coach? I'm going to say Washington. Dan Quinn's a great coach. He's coached in Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. Quarterback. Most people would say Joe Burrow. I would even say Joe Burrow at this point. This season, not so much, but you'd say Joe Burrow. Who has the better defense? The Bengals definitely have the better defense. But the better coach won out. And the quarterback played better, but the Bengals on offense played well in that game. So that's what I'm saying. So when they all three fit on one side, better coach, better quarterback, better defense, that's the side you bet on. And you will win a lot of the time. It won't always work. It goes the other way sometimes. Sometimes you don't cover the spread. But that's how simple handicapping can be. Now, once you learn that, you have to learn a few other things. You have to learn that you have to stay away from your heart. And so your heart works this way. If you don't have control over your heart, over your emotions, sports betting is not for you. So let's say you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. And the reason I bring this up is because they're the worst about this. Dallas Cowboys are always going to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year. And at the end of the year, it's always, well, we got this far. We're going to make all these moves and we'll be back next year. Every year it's the same thing. All right. Dallas Cowboys fans have a lot invested in their team. They have a lot of heart in it. So they make a lot of bad plays based on their heart. But they also make a bad plays based on their heart in the sense that they hate certain teams. They'll bet against the Eagles. They'll bet against the Giants. They'll bet against the Redskins. They'll bet against the Green Bay and against San Francisco just because there's a history there of it being negative to the Cowboys. Even though they're clearly the wrong bets, they'll still convince themselves that they're the right bets because their heart says so. So you got to stay away from your heart. If you have a problem with that, completely avoid your division games, completely avoid your team games. There's plenty of other games to bet on. Games you can look at objectively. That's one of the biggest key is looking at it objectively. I bet for and against my team all the time. I've bet my quarterback to throw an interception almost every week. I fully expect Bo Nix to throw 20 interceptions this year. I'm going to try to take advantage of it, betting on him. I want him to throw them. It's like, do I think he's going to be good someday? I do. I have that hope. I'm a Broncos fan. Do I think it's going to be this year? Of course not, and I'm going to try to make money that way. So that's another thing is you got to get your heart out of it. If you're starting into sports betting and you want to make some money at it. And the last thing, and this is in some ways as important as everything else, maybe more important. Sports betting is not a lottery ticket. It's not, you're not going to make $1 million this week, or you're not even going to make $5,000 this week, probably, unless you're betting $5,000 bets. If you're betting $10 bets, guys, you need to have some real expectations that are incremental. It's like investing, right? Stafford, yeah. He's kind of slowed down on that a little bit, though. But still, throughout the course of his history career, Matthew Stafford has been a gold mine on interceptions. So right now, Mahomes is the guy. You better Mahomes pick every game. And you wouldn't think that, right? But it is. He's throwing an interception every game. So you'd be making a ton off of him. So, but the thing with it is when this is an investment style of making money. It's not a lottery ticket. It's not a home run thing. If you want to be good at this, you have to do it incrementally. You have to do it over time. So don't take 1 week, 1 month, maybe not even 1 year as an indicator. 1 year, one season should be, you should have an idea by one season, but 1 month doesn't mean anything. I've had months before where I barely missed a game, and then the next 2 weeks get crushed using all the same metrics, using all the same strategy, using all the same thought processes. But the variance kicks in, and it's about a steady trend upward, right? Yeah, primetime, Kirk. And it's a steady trend upward as opposed to getting crazy and getting in your heart and getting out of line and you have big swings. You don't want big swings. You want your steady trend upward. And just like any other investment, think about it every time you're putting a bet down. That is an investment. You're putting, okay, I got this money that I'm using to invest in this player, in this team, all right, with your return coming in 3 hours, right? You watch the game, boom, you get a return or you lose your money, all right? Then you move on. But if you do this well and you do it right and you don't get out of your box, out of your square, and you stay in some solid parameters, you'll make money. You will. The problem is most people can't do that. That's where most people, and then that's where a lot of this, oh, it's rigged, it's this, it's that, that comes along when people can't keep themselves under control. Oh, look, I knew I was right on that and that, they missed that field goal on purpose. No, they didn't. These guys get paid more money to win the game than they do to lose the game. All right. They get more endorsements. They get more, they have incentives in their contracts to produce wins. There's no way these players are out there throwing these games. And so it doesn't make sense. But from a better standpoint, they can convince themselves that these things happen. It's not true. The handful of times in history that it's happened were very specific and almost always specific to referees. So, or to sports where one individual can control it. NFL is not really like that. So all the people that think the NFL is rigged, if it is, it's nothing to do with sports betting. People could say it's rigged for TV, but really, they have an NFL game on Thursday, Saturday, or Thursday, Sunday, Monday. Sometimes on Saturdays. Sometimes multiples on Thursday. Sometimes multiples on Monday. They have prime time on Monday, prime time on Sunday, prime time on Thursday. Like, they don't got to rig anything. They own it all. They own all the TV space. And then they have college football that is kind of like the little brother, right? Yeah, I would love Pete Rose to be put in the Hall of Fame, and I'll explain why. The Hall of Fame in any sport is based on what you accomplished in that sport. He accomplished a record that will likely never be broken, the all-time hits leader. There's no reason he shouldn't be in there for his accomplishments. Now, if you want to say that he was betting on his own games, whatever you want to think about that, that's fine. It still doesn't change the fact that he holds the all-time hits record. It doesn't change the fact that this guy hit more recorded hits than anyone that's ever played baseball. And let me assure you, a lot of people have played baseball in the pros. I think I looked it up before, and it was like 50,000 or something like that have played in the pros. So the fact of the matter is it doesn't have anything to do. The reason he's not in has nothing to do with his accomplishment on the field, and that bothers me. Where guys that took steroids fit a different category. I'm still on their side to reach the Hall of Fame because in their era, every player had the opportunity to do it. It wasn't like pitchers weren't doing it and only hitters were. Every player could have done it. Some players chose not to. So in my opinion, the players that are widely considered to never have done steroids in them eras should be held on a higher pedestal, right? Your Ken Griffey's, your Greg Maddox's, they should be held in a higher esteem. It doesn't mean the other people shouldn't be in. They still hit all those home runs, and the other pitchers were still juiced up too. So maybe what they need to do is they need to box in the steroid era and kind of have its own records almost, because it definitely was different. It definitely was bigger. A lot of guys were hitting over 40 home runs. A lot of guys were, having 250 strikeout, years. I mean, it was a lot compared to modern baseball now or baseball before that. And it's a clear change. Like, you can see it in the numbers. It's not like just a few guys. It's a huge bunch of guys that were involved in it. Now, there was a bunch of big names that get all the recognition for steroid use. But it doesn't change the fact that they hit them home runs. It doesn't change the fact that Roger Clemens struck out all those people, right? I mean, but like I said, yeah, personally, that's what I think they should do. They should just say this era was specific to one scandal, but let's just say who was the best in that era, right? I don't think that's a big negative thing to baseball then. It almost kind of shines a positive light on it, saying, hey, there was some craziness that happened right here, and these are the people that were the best at the craziness, because in previous eras, like through the 70s and 80s, the guys were all hopped up on cocaine, and a bunch of them had got busted with cocaine, but the baseball kept it quiet. There wasn't all the national media there was during the steroid era, right? So baseball kept all that quiet. As it grew, they couldn't keep it quiet anymore as the media grew. So at every given time, every given era of sports, there's some guys that are trying to get an edge illegally. This happens now. Von Miller just got in trouble for PEDs. All right. Von Miller's widely considered a pretty good guy in football, but he just got in trouble for PEDs because he's trying to keep his edge. He's getting old. A lot of the guys, as they get old, they do that. A lot of people love Peyton Manning, but when Peyton Manning went through his neck surgeries, he got out of football for a year. You know why? Because he wanted to take steroids, and it's kind of widely accepted that that's what he did. So, again, they should let the guys take steroids to heal, in my opinion. In every sport, if you're injured, you should be allowed to take the steroids to heal, because if me or you get injured, they're going to give us steroids at the doctor to go do our job again. But because baseball, basketball, football, hockey, all these sports have performance-based metrics, they don't want them to take steroids. But make them take steroids while they heal, and then make them dry out of them, and then they can play again. But let these guys use them to heal because they need it. And that was the one thing about the steroid era. If you remember the steroid era in baseball, no one was ever hurt. No one was ever hurt. Everyone played all the time because they were all hopped up on steroids. So their body was able to heal and able to recover, and they didn't have soft tissue injuries like they do now every day. So there was some benefits to the steroid era. There was, as far as the game went. The game was exciting then too. It was exciting when you had guys chasing 60 and 70 home runs that played against each other 20 times a year, with the Sosa McGwire thing. There was a lot of excitement in baseball then, and it's kind of died down. It's not as fun of a sport anymore. There's no heroes in baseball, and that's part of the problem, right? There's no heroes. Baseball used to have a lot of heroes. You got Ohtani now, but Ohtani can't speak English, so people don't really know what he's saying. Mike Trout didn't work out to be the hero everyone thought he was going to be. So right now, the biggest heroes in baseball are guys like Aaron Judge. And Aaron Judge is essentially silent to the media. You don't see him in the media hardly. He could be like a larger-than-life character hitting 60 home runs a year, and he's like 6'7" or whatever he is. He could be this big thing, But really, outside of the New York area, you don't hear a lot about Aaron Judge. You just don't. They just have lost. So, anyways, that was a fun talk there about baseball. I used to really, really love baseball. Now baseball is just something I check out every now and then to make some money on. I don't love it like I used to. Um, and again, I grew up in the steroid era. So all my teen years was all through the 90s. So I grew up in the era where that was like before it was the steroid era. Everyone was just crushing the ball everywhere, you know. You shortstops were hitting 30 home runs every year. Now that happens now, but back then that was weird, you know. The shortstops that hit 30 home runs a year was unusual. But now all of them do anymore. So you really, if you can't hit the long ball anymore, you really can't play professional baseball. So, but anyways, thank you guys for your time. Good luck Thursday nights tomorrow. It should be an interesting game. Shouldn't be a terrible game by any means, I don't think. I do I do think Tampa wins easily, but Kirk Cousins and Atlanta have a way of making things fun. So we'll see what happens. All right. Anyways, guys, thank you for your time. That was a really fun talk. Um, about the guy that came in earlier, I think he was wanting to try politics or talk politics or something. Guys, I'm never going to talk politics. First of all, I honestly just don't really care all that much. It's out of my realm because generally, no matter which side gets in, my life doesn't really change all that much um, from day to day. So I don't notice it like I think maybe other people do. So I don't really care all that much. I'm too busy worrying about my wife and kids and my business and my job that I don't really have time for all that. And plus, this isn't the place for it. We're talking about sports betting, talking about sports. We'll talk about anything you want. If you wanted to talk about cricket, we would have talked about cricket all day long. I know nothing about cricket, but I'd have looked it up. I would have tried to figure some stuff out about it. I have zero idea about cricket. I don't even really know how it's played. I know they use that flat bat and they bounce the ball, roll the ball when they hit it, and the field is kind of all around the players because I've watched it on TV a little bit, and I know that the little stick thing is called wickets. But overall, I don't really know how it's played. Turns out those guys are actually really good athletes, though. I've like done a little research on that. That some of those guys are just amazing athletes. So cricket's obviously a cool sport. They play it everywhere on the planet except for here. You know, everywhere else plays cricket. So when do I usually go live? I go live on Wednesdays. I try to do it at 9 o'clock my time. On Wednesdays. Uh, Sometimes on Wednesdays I might have to record it. Depends if I work nights. I work some Wednesday nights. So if I work nights, I'll have to record it and I'll put it out during the day. But other than that, I should be on Wednesday nights. I also go on just before Monday Night Football. I try to do it like an hour or two before Monday Night Football. That one also might have to record it every now and then. So I do Monday Night Football separate. So it's got its own little video. I should go live on it sometimes. I'm in my truck at work sometimes when I do it. You know, sometimes I record it. So it just depends. Other than that, I put out craps content almost daily. Anyways, thanks for hanging out with us, Power Girl. Sounds like you're interested in sports, which is always cool. We'd like to have way more women involved in our community. We don't have a lot. Our metrics say only about 2% of our people are women. So it'd be cool to have some more women involved. Anyways, guys, thank you for your time. This is Jacob from Wager Me This.